Guess what? I'm going back to Japan. And if you haven't already seen my video about the LUMIX S5II at launch, it is a great video to watch to give you an introduction to the camera. But with me heading to Japan, and I'll be very much running and gunning basically the entire time I'm there, so I thought it would be good to give you guys a rundown of how I set up my camera for those solo run and gun scenarios. They happen a lot. This is kind of a throwback video because one of the first videos that I posted on this channel was how to set up your settings on your S1H. A lot has changed since then, so let's go. First things first, there is a link in the description where you can actually download my custom settings I talk about in this video, and you can follow along while you watch. Just download the file, put it on your SD card, put that in your camera, go to the menu, go to the wrench, then the cogwheel, and click Save/Restore Camera Settings. Then click load. And voila. Oh, and real quick too, I'm also giving away a Misc 50mm 1.2 once we reach 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. And once I reach 10,000 on Instagram, I'm giving away an 85mm L mount. All you gotta do is subscribe or follow me there to participate in those giveaways. Now I'm going to explain all the settings I've changed and why. Feel free to also pause the video and change these settings as you like, since some of these may not be as applicable to you or your use case. But I think this is a great starting point. The first thing I'm going to cover is the Q menu. I believe Q stands for quick menu, and it's basically the catch-all for all the settings I typically have to go into the menu to turn on or off. So the first settings is my rec list. This may not be available as an option to add because, well, you need to add some recording options to your menu. The recording settings that I typically have set up in my list are 6K OpenGate 30p, 6K OpenGate 24p, 3.3K 48 FPS anamorphic, 4K 60p, 4K 48p, 4K 24p, and HD 120p. Feel free to figure out what you want in there, but those are pretty much all I use on my camera. But every now and then I do have to use another one, so right next to it I have all the recording options right there. The My Rec list is just nicer because there's so many different options when it comes to the recording settings, so that's why I like to have my list first. I've also tried to lay out all of these settings as well in the Q menu, so it kind of makes sense. The next one is picture profile settings. I'm usually just shooting in Vlog, but there are times that I will switch to the natural or the standard profiles, so I like to have this in here. The next one is image stabilizer. This is another one that I don't really turn off unless I'm shooting with a very wide lens and the corners are really warpy, or when I put the camera on a gimbal, I'll usually turn this off so the stabilizer is not fighting the gimbal, and when I throw on an anamorphic lens that isn't supported squeeze-wise on the S5II. Like these Sirui lenses right here, this 50mm and the little 35mm is a little bit of a closer look. Videos coming on these very soon. That is one thing I want Panasonic to add because they do have specific anamorphic squeeze options for the stabilizer, which is really nice, but there's no 1.6 squeeze option, so I mean, it is what it is. Especially when people are probably going for these more budget-friendly options. That's probably what they're mostly going to be putting on this camera, especially if they're beginners. They're probably going to go for the more budget anamorphic lenses. And just a quick little thing I noticed too, when it comes to anamorphic lenses, there is a setting in here, like I mentioned, where you can tell the stabilizer what squeeze the anamorphic lenses you're using, and I love that. But you can't add that to the Q menu as an option to quickly turn on. It's weird to me, or maybe there's just something I'm missing or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I have to put it on a different button, which there are some kind of weird quirks. There are certain settings that you can only do in the Q menu, but you can put them on a button. I don't know, there's a few little quirks like that I don't really love. Anyways, next one is the E stabilization. Just another one that comes in handy on the fly. Same with this next one, the boost stabilization. Sometimes I want to be extremely stable, tripod stable, but I'm shooting handheld, and that is what the Boost IS is for. So super nice to just turn that on and quickly snag a shot. The next one is Synchro Scan. This one you don't have to use a ton, but there are times you have to dial in your shutter to the exact speed or degree so you don't get those flickering lights. Nice to have that there so I can quickly dial that in. The next one is peaking on or off. Now that we have good autofocus on this camera, I'm actually filming on it right now, this one is used a lot less. But sometimes I want to get a specific look in a shot, or I'm using a manual lens, kind of like these anamorphics. So with this, we can quickly turn it on and off. And sometimes the sensitivity is too high. I feel like on certain lenses, I don't know. Sometimes I just find myself needing to turn down the sensitivity or turn it up depending on like the lens and the situation. So that's why I like to have that there. Speaking of focus, I have AF video settings on the next one. I don't really mess with this very often. I like my setting to have AF speed at +2 and AF sensitivity at 0, but there are times where the AF is pretty sensitive when there's like a large crowd of people and I'm trying to focus on like a specific subject. I don't want it shifting around on the different subjects. So in that case, I will change it and I want it to be easy to access. The next one is anamorphic de-squeeze. I've been shooting a lot of stuff on anamorphic lately, and even in Japan, we're going to be shooting a music video on some anamorphic lenses. Just having that right there is really nice, so then when I put that on, I don't have to go into the menu every single time. The last one is a new one. This is LUT on or off. Now, typically I shoot in vlog for the most part, but when I'm shooting like family stuff, for example, I want to shoot in vlog, but let's be honest, when are you going to go back and color grade your log footage of the stuff you film of your family? Probably never. And I don't always want to have to use the standard or other picture profiles the camera has to offer. I want to use the look that I would get if I colored it in post. Well, now it's the best of both worlds. So yeah, this one is just super nice because I can quickly turn it on and bake in a LUT for those types of shots. Okay, so that is the Q menu, but we're not done yet. There are some more things I've changed on here. The first one is changing this dial to adjust ISO. I don't know if it's just because of my background on Sony's, but I love being able to change the ISO from here. It just doesn't really make sense, at least to me, to have to press a button and then spin a dial in order to change that. Especially when the aperture and the shutter, all I have to do is spin the dials. So it should be the same, right? At least in my brain, that's how it works. Now, I didn't do this, but some people do like to do it, and that's switching the shutter speed with the aperture, because sometimes you will accidentally spin the shutter to the wrong shutter speed on accident. It's really easy to, here, I can just show you on the S5. It's really easy to just accidentally spin this dial while you're going. I wish there was a way to lock it, but you know, maybe we can only wish. I did change it to this for about a month, but I'm just so used to it being like that I would end up changing my shutter every time anyways when I wanted to adjust my aperture or vice versa. It just didn't work for me, but it might work for you, so I just wanted to let you know. Now back to that ISO dial. I have buttons on here as well. For the up button, I have waveform monitor. The reason I put it here over the Q menu is on the Q menu, I don't have the ability to only put waveform monitor on or off. I have to select either vector scope or waveform, but when it's here, I can select only waveform monitor. On my S1H, I didn't really use waveform monitor, but I find myself using it more and more. I'll just turn it on really quick to make sure I'm not clipping in my highlights. I know I could use zebras for that, but sometimes when you're shooting anamorphic, you've got peaking on, you're monitoring auto, you've got all the other settings up, it just becomes too much for me and I don't like it. So I make the waveform monitor as small as I can and put it right there in the bottom right corner. Now on the right button, I have audio display on or off. Sometimes I'm not shooting with audio or care about audio like for B-roll, so it's really nice to just be able to turn that off and just get that off the screen so I can see more what I'm doing. This next one is a big one. On my down arrow, I have audio adjustment. Obviously, it's nice to have to adjust the audio, but while you're recording, you can still click this and adjust audio on the fly. So maybe you go into like a louder environment or your subject talks louder than you're expecting, but you don't want to stop recording, you can just click that real quick and adjust your level. Then lastly, on the left button, I have frame marker. This one is especially nice when it comes to my workflow. So the reason I'm going to Japan is I work for a YouTuber now, and a lot of the time we are also trying to get content for vertical. So this way I can easily turn that on and off when we think we're shooting something that could be like a reel or a YouTube short or any of those vertical formats. There's another little thing that kind of annoys me when it comes to the custom setup. So in order to change this, you go into the menu and go to frame marker, then click set. I like to have a 25% frame mask too, just so you know. But when you go to the frame aspect, you scroll all the way down to the bottom and you'll see a 9:16 option. Usually I'm only using that option, but sometimes I will need a different aspect ratio. Maybe I'm just missing something, but I don't see anywhere in the menus to be able to set frame aspect as a button. I think it would be nice to have that. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm missing something. So that covers everything on this dial right here. We're not done yet though. Bear with me. For me, I never use this exposure comp button. So what I did is I put silent mode on that button. I do like having that audio cue that I started and stopped recording. but sometimes it can be disruptive. So I put that there so it's easy to turn that on and off. For the button on the front next to the lens lock button, I like to put enlarged live display right there, so even when I'm recording, I can still punch in and see if I'm in focus. Especially useful when I'm shooting on manual focus lenses. You can also just double tap the screen, and that is nice when I'm shooting on a gimbal, but when I'm shooting handheld, I don't like to take a whole hand off the camera just to punch in, you know? Usually this is in a good place for me to just quickly tap that. Oh, and if you don't like how it punches in like this, you can tap this button right here on the screen and it'll make it full screen, and it should remember that setting when you tap in again. Now, the reason I didn't map any of the other buttons is because everything I use is pretty much already on a button. The level gauge is on the back button, there's the display setting, and here's an important one. Autofocus settings. Usually I'm shooting in full area with human detect on, but I do have to sometimes switch to like one area plus, switch on or off the human detection, or change to animal plus human. I just didn't really see a reason to change any of those because they're already right there. And if you want to use one area, you just tap the screen and you can adjust it super easily. Then just click the menu/set button to set it and cancel it as well. Actually, some of the settings I'll maybe just mention in this video I think are useful when it comes to focus. I turned on AF plus MF mode. This basically just means that even when the camera is in autofocus, you can still adjust the focus manually from the ring. The autofocus is great on the camera, but there are times when I need to tell it where to go. Specifically, probably when I'm getting like a close-up shot on something. Sometimes the focus will be like focused somewhere else. So it's just nice to be able to adjust it and I don't have to turn off manual. Anyways, you get it. Another one is the focus ring control. I changed this to linear and then I try to set all of my lenses to be the exact same. Kind of just helps me build some muscle memory when I'm using manual focus on these lenses. Oh, I forgot, there's 3 more things I want to mention, and then I think I've covered everything. I actually did change the AF on button as well to AF lock. I'm still kind of figuring out what I like being here, since if I need to grab focus real quick, I can just press the shutter halfway. It seems kind of redundant to have AF on as well. Kind of like how the ISO button and the dial do the same thing now. I changed the ISO button to V-Log LUT monitoring. There's a video coming soon that I'll talk about why I put this here, but it may not apply to your use case. So feel free to mess around with those buttons, or really any of the buttons I mentioned, and let me know what you think would be good buttons to go here down in the comments. The last and final thing I changed is the double card slot function. So I changed it to have it allocate my videos to one card and my photos to another card. I like it being this way because they aren't already in different folders when you put the card on a computer, so it just keeps things nice and organized for me. And there we go. That is everything, I think. Hopefully this video isn't too long, but again, just a reminder that you can download this specific custom setup for your S5II into the description, and this should work for the S5II as well once it's released. That's coming up soon. I'm excited for the Batman camera. If you found this video helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you can be notified of future uploads. And if you don't have an S5II or an S5II and are interested in picking one up after watching this video, there is a link in the description. It's an affiliate link, of course, and it supports me, so thank you if you do. Until the next video though, happy filming.